Started. Welcome everybody. My name's Jo Beecroft Mitchell. I'm part of the development team for Heart Edge. So welcome to this Heart Edge event on contemplative communities and their gift to the church. This is week 3 of a series. So if you've been with us all the way, welcome back. And if you're brand new, don't worry. It's great to have you. There will be recordings of all the sessions. You've missed some great sessions, but we can send them to you. So don't worry about that. Welcome. So this week we welcome some people from Foundation Bristol. So we've got David Stevenson and Simon Rotherham. And they're going to talk a little bit about the history of Foundation, what Foundation is up to today, and then give us a flavour of what happens at a Foundation service. I won't say too much about it because I'll let David and Simon introduce themselves. Personally, I'm really giddy about this session because I know they do some really fabulous creative and artistic stuff, and as someone who's always looking for new ideas to steal for my own creative and artistic sessions at church, I'm really excited about that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So welcome. We're going to begin with some input from David and Simon, who will, as I say, talk about Foundation. As we go along, feel free to comment and add questions in the chat. We will then have a session for Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on all the questions as they come along. And then at the end, we're going to finish with a flavour of what it's like to attend a Foundation service. And then we'll finish the session. So lots to pack in the next hour and a half, but I'm sure it'll be great. I should probably comment on the fact that I can't evict my cat from the office. So if she does make an appearance, I apologise and I will mute myself. So without further ado, I'll hand over to David and Simon. Oh, I've lost them. Are you there?
We are now.
Hey.
Our Wi-Fi has dropped out twice, so we'll try and plug it in to an Ethernet cable in the next couple of minutes. Really nice to see everybody. We're delighted to have the opportunity to present to add to the growing body of resources that Heart Edge make available. We've been so encouraged to be part of the growing Heart Edge network and have received so much that we're pleased to be able to give a little bit back. And I hope through this session you'll all get a flavour of the ways in which we're continuing to discover contemplation as a gift to the life of our community here in Bristol. So as long as our broadband holds up for the next bit, I'm going to hand over to Simon.
Hi everyone. So Jo was doing the introduction, so we don't know what you've just said, Jo. But just to introduce myself, I'm Simon, and I'm my title is I'm the Foundation Community Minister. So I help to lead the Foundation community. David's the vicar of Cottam and St Paul's, and Foundation is a congregation of Cottam Parish Church, and David acts as sort of priest accompanier is his role, part of the steering group of Foundation. So we're going to start, and we wanted to give you a little bit of a flavour right from the start of what it looks like to be part of a typical Foundation gathering, because a significant part of what we do is the space we create through imagery and lights and all sorts of things. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavour. The music of the artists, musicians in the benefice. So that's what you'll hear in the background. Hopefully this will work. If it's a bit staggery, forgive us. Hopefully you'll get an idea. So I'll share my screen.
Thanks, Simon. I hope that works okay for all of you at home. So Foundation has existed in a variety of forms over the last almost 20 years. It began as Resonance, and then two groups amalgamated and Foundation was formed. And it really sprang out of the alternative worship movement. If any of you were Greenbelters back in the 90s, you probably can remember all sorts of installation, techno kind of services, and Foundation really emerged from that. And at times it was quite big and very installation focused. Other times there were just 5 or 6 people gathering regularly, sitting quietly around a candle. It has, through all of its various stages and phases, essentially been a community that has been a home for people who have in some way or another felt on the edge of church life, or feel that they're in a kind of transition phase in their spiritual lives and in their Christian pilgrimage. So being a place on the edge of church continues to be really important to us, and I know it's important to a lot of those who are connecting with us now. As for so many communities, lockdown and taking our community online provided a jolt into fresh experiment and fresh forms and expressions. And I would say it was in that period that we really began to explore in a very clear way, having a contemplative heart and being a community built around contemplation and becoming much more intentional about the practices of our community, creating stronger rhythms of prayer and more spaces in which we were meeting and engaging with each other. And then as we began to come back and physically gather, I think the sense that we'd stepped into a new period in Foundation, and that we wanted to perhaps more actively grow as contemplative community, we decided to have a period of prayerful community discernment, and just to work out together what our core values were. And that's the stage that we've reached now. At the end of 2020, we established 4 core community values that Simon will set out in a moment. And really since then, for the last 14 or 15 months, we've really been exploring and deepening those 4 values. And I think perhaps feeling that we're in a relatively settled place as a community going forward now. So Simon, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share with you Foundation's 4 core values, and I'm going to unpack a little bit of how that shapes our patterns and practices, our monthly themes, and just what that means for us on a week-by-week basis. So our first core value is that we seek to be a mystical or contemplative community. And of course, there's lots of ways you can define those 2 words, but I suppose at its heart for us, that means making room for God's Spirit in our community and forming deep connections with God and with one another. Second one there is inclusive. We seek to be an inclusive community, and that applies to the benefits at large, that we're a community for everyone, and that we seek to remove barriers to full participation. And I guess significantly that we believe that there is a role for absolutely everyone within our community. Third one, that we are a socially engaged community, or seek to be a socially engaged community, encouraging connections between contemplation and action. We don't stop at contemplation, but we seek to implement that in some way in our daily lives. with a commitment to truth and justice. And the fourth one, which is really important to us, is that we are a creative community, or seek to be, encouraging curiosity, inquiry, imagination, and making room for art and expression. So these are the values that shape us and that we seek to embody through our patterns and practices. So I'm just going to say something about our patterns. And our rhythm is shaped, designed to reflect and give expression to those four core values. So we follow a monthly pattern of worship, with each Sunday of the month having a different theme and a different approach. So you'll see that our first Sunday of the month is a rest service, a reflective service of night prayer, similar to a compline, which gives expression to our contemplative value. And then on the second Sunday of the month, we have two themes: create and pilgrimage. And that's a sense that we're on a journey together as a community. And recently we've developed that service as well to give expression to our value of being a socially engaged community. So on those Sundays, we want to engage with a key justice issue of our day, and with practitioners that are at the forefront of addressing social justice issues and engaging with those as partners. Our third Sunday of the month is always a good one, table. And that's a creative Eucharist service, and often in the context of a shared meal, agape feast. Just last Sunday, we did it with pancakes, which was great. You might have seen that in the video, the pancake flipping, which went terribly wrong most of the time. But that's just a really beautiful, natural way of sharing the table together around a shared meal. And that gives expression to our inclusive value. And we try to hear from members of our community, hear their stories on those evenings too. And then on the fourth Sunday of the month, we have our create and community evenings. And that's, as I've said there, a service which could literally be anything, often led by members of our community with creative gifts, giving expression to our creative values and what it means to be a Christian community of faith. And just as a side note, on fifth Sundays, they're typically rest services, but we're also looking to experiment on fifth Sundays with various things, different spiritual practices and other things. So that's a brief overview of our patterns. And just a note on practices. So our practices are quite many and quite varied. And again, they're designed to be practiced or with the intention of giving expression to the four core values identified at the start. So I'm just going to share some common practices we typically use. We allow generous use of silence and space in our services. We try not to be afraid of long silences, but to allow that. We try to practice a variety of creative approaches to exploring scripture together. And most significantly there, allowing for everyone to contribute in the interpretive process of that. And that for us is as well breaking out of the familiar. We use a wide variety of music in our services, from Teze chants to hymns and all kinds of other music that we enjoy and that are significant for us. We employ a diverse range of arts, so visual arts. Just yesterday we had a service which was reflecting on a series of paintings by the late Stanley Spencer called Christ in the Wilderness, and we sort of used those as prayer stations around the room and reflected on those. Other arts, musical, poetry, even making and creating in our services too. As I've mentioned, shared meals and storytelling too are common practices that we engage in.
To unmute David again. Thank you.
So I'm going to hand back to David, and we're going to just talk about some of how contemplation has been a gift to our community.
Thanks, Simon. Just quipping in the chat that we're not going to have slides up the whole time, and as I was typing that, I must have hit mute as well. So I hope you didn't miss too much of what Simon just said. Having seen lots of Simon's lovely face in that one, I'm going to share the screen again now as we move on to beginning to explore the ways in which contemplation is a gift for us in Foundation, the ways in which we're discovering that. And I really love the title of this series, Contemplation as a Gift to the Church. And Simon and I have been reflecting on the way in which that title has invited us to begin to discern those gifts, to see the distinctive ways in which we are experiencing contemplation as a gift to each of us and to us as a community. We've got, I think, 5.
Hi, David. You seem to have frozen.
Are you getting us now?
Yep.
Yeah. So then Simon will unpack that a little bit. Then I'll relate that gift to the icon of friendship, which is one of the images that is really important to us and that you can all see on your screens. And then after that, Simon will read the quotes that you can see on the screen. Each of the quotes in relation to each of the gifts of contemplation are the words of a member of our community, not our own words at that point. And it was wonderful. It was another gift, really, hearing the way in which people are particularly encountering contemplation as a gift to them. So the first of contemplation's gifts to us at Foundation is that contemplation creates a level space, a space where we can all, as it were, stand in the space, stand on the ground together.
Yeah. So an example of that is one I've just mentioned in terms of the interpretive process. And when we come to read scripture together, so we regularly invite contributions from the whole community when typically something like Lectio Divina, and that's such a gift because it allows us to see from different perspectives and different viewpoints, and sometimes that will be just directly in response to a passage of scripture, and sometimes that's in response to a reflection from another member of the community. But for me, that's been a real example of how contemplation is a leveler and is a real gift to the community in terms of just hearing from the richness of people's experience and from how God speaks in different ways to different people.
So in the icon of friendship, we can see Jesus and his friend standing together. They're sharing a space and a place. They're on level ground, and you can see from the friend of Jesus that his feet are bare as well. That sense of standing together with Christ in silence, in contemplation, in shared prayer has become really important to us, and we find powerfully echoed in this icon.
So a quote there from a member of our community: in contrast to a feeling of being told what to think or feel in other churches, I found in Foundation an invitation to consider what God might be saying and the space to encounter God for myself. Immensely helpful and encouraging.
So I think we'll just pause for a few moments and allow you to think about the way in which contemplation as a level space might be a gift to you too before we move on to the next one. And somebody has picked up in chat, I really love that, the way that the friend of Jesus is blessing Jesus, that sense of mutual space in the icon that that we would say that we experience too here. And do keep the chat coming. So the second gift of contemplation that we've identified is the way in which contemplation, rather more than words, is open to all faiths and none. We've got people from a whole range, particularly but not exclusively of Christian traditions within our community, and people who are looking for fresh expression within their Christian faith. And also we've got people who are not sure at all if they're Christians, and who are perhaps exploring what faith means to them. We've got somebody who identifies as an atheist who is finding great meaning and space within our community at the moment, and says how much he appreciates the sense of pilgrimage that he finds here.
Yeah, so it feels like a real gift to be journeying with people at different points on the journey of faith. And I think contemplation facilitates that, that we are able to be encouraged ourselves and to encourage and challenge and be challenged by people's experiences, understandings, perspectives. And it feels like contemplation allows us to accompany people on their journey as opposed to imposing an agenda or a route that they must take, and that feels like a real gift.
In the icon of friendship, I love it that that Jesus holds the book of the Gospels. Jesus carries the whole life and truth of God's life within his life, and his friend is simply holding a scroll, a portion, as it were, of the text, perhaps his own particular treasured portion of the life of faith, the one that's particular to him, the one that's been gifted to him, and each of our scrolls we recognise are distinctive. Each of us carries that portion of God's life that has been gifted to us, and therefore there's no room in our community for imposing one particular strong or controlling or defining narrative on others. We want people to find the space to discover and to rejoice in their own particular scroll.
The quote, and for me, opportunities to participate in a more engaged way, to understand better that liturgy is embedded in human experience, the spiritual and the human interwoven, finding God in community and in creative contemplative expressions in the current monthly patterns of service.
And so again, we'll keep some moments of quiet now for your own reflections. And yeah, I love what somebody has just said in chat, Simon, saying that this is an invitation for each of us to see ourselves as drawn into this community of friendship and to share that path. thanks to Kate. I think that's beautiful, because that's in a sense the other way round to how I'd framed it. That our own stories are part of God's greater story, each distinctive life contributing to the ongoing writing of the story of God's love. In the Church of England ordination service, it says, with all God's people, you are to tell the story of God's love. The next gift of contemplation for us is that it's not simply a matter of mind and heart, but it's also about embodied practice. We come as whole people, and that's where I think particularly the contemplative value touches on the creative. We have been encouraged through making, through signing, even through a bit of clowning, to offer our whole selves to the practices of contemplation.
And we find that whilst we have 4 individual values, they're all interconnected, and in fact, contemplation sort of undergirds the other 3. The other 3 flow out of our contemplative practice, and it is amazing to see what does come out of contemplation in terms of creativity and social engagement and inclusion, and the way we treat one another. It's amazing to see, and just how they connect and interact with one another and inform each other is a real gift, and contemplation being at the heart of that.
And returning then to the icon, clearly 2 embodied friends, but I love just seeing the fingers, the hand of Jesus about the shoulder of his friend. That sense of physical connection, that reminds us that we relate to Jesus in community with one another as enfleshed people.
I'd say foundation is helping me to find God in the stillness and the reflective liturgy. Particularly helps to give me a voice to God when my own words leave me. While I enjoy rousing music and lots of noise too, it's hard to beat the power found in the still small voice of silence and contemplation.
Thanks to Lisa for that observation about or insight about body prayer. I think another way in which we reflect that is not being too prescriptive about posture. There's somebody who regularly brings a yoga mat along with her and lies down for good portions of our gatherings. Not being rooted to the spot either, but really using the whole of the space. And we, for example, particularly did that last night. We had a series of stations using the Stanley Spencer paintings, so allowing people to find their spaces within the space is also important. The next treasure is the way in which I think we seek to share the treasures. We've identified 5 or 6 treasures here, but we're aware that there is a treasure chest in contemplative traditions and expressions of Christianity. One of the things I think that we're seeking to do is to make those treasures available, to open up the treasure chest so that people can put their hands in and have a good route around for something that attracts them. Realizing that sometimes contemplative Christian practices can seem a little remote to people, a little esoteric. People perhaps fearing it might not be for them. So we, without being overly prescriptive, seek to do some unpacking for people.
One of the ways I've experienced this recently, we put on a course based on the writings of Thomas Merton and other writers. There's a series called Bridges to Contemplative Living, which is worth a look at if you're interested in this. And that really explores contemplative dialogue, which is essentially deep listening and hearing the experiences and revelations, I suppose, given to others through their experiences without comment or judgment, but just receiving what each other have to say and hearing that. And that allows us to receive the gifts and treasures that others have received through their own life experiences, and to share our own. So that's how I've experienced that as a real contemplative gift recently.
In terms of the icon, for me, this connects with the icon as a whole, 6th century Egyptian, and therefore deeply ancient, but that although it's ancient, it's found renewal, particularly through the Taizé community. One of the key images that's at the heart of that ecumenical contemplative community, and the way in which the ancient can be offered in fresh ways in our contemporary context always, that the treasures can be taken out and dusted down and offered afresh. And I love the way in which this icon has got those 2 cracks going right down the length, a sense of fracturing but still whole, broken but still alive. And you know, renewal, I think, takes all that is and all that has been and offers it again and again and again in the life of prayer.
So foundation has helped me to tune into contemplation as an act of worship. It is helping me to slow down, and instead of rushing from one part of the service to the next and trying to be a good Christian, it is teaching me to really let words sink in and change me. It's a big learning curve for me, but I have found that contemplation helps me find peace and rest when faith used to be agitated and fairly performative.
And the last gift that we want to identify is the way in which contemplation honours and builds both individuals and builds up the community. I think we've been hugely inspired by a portion from Richard Carter's book, The City is My Monastery, on shared silence, and how there's something tangibly different about praying in silence with others to praying in silence on our own, and the way in which, although the space for each of us as individuals within that shared silence, also there is something that that binds us more closely together. It is profoundly a shared experience.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed and appreciated has been how contemplation together honors each one as someone to whom God can speak, not only to them but through them to the community, whether you're the vicar or have just walked in off the street. And for me, that is a real gift.
Just looking back through chat and noticing Simon's word participation, and the way in which we participate in silence as well as in speech, and using silence to open up that space between us. And then linking this gift with the icon. The eyes in icons are regularly worth paying attention to, and for me it's really striking that the friends are praying with their eyes open. They're looking, although they're standing alongside each other, their inner eyes, as it were, are turned towards the other, but also together they're looking out to the world. So that sense in which, as we stand or sit with Jesus in contemplation, we're in his gaze, and we gaze upon him, but also that as we pray together, we behold one another in that space, and also we look on one another with Jesus. So we're encouraged to see each other through the eyes of Jesus, looking with Jesus at one another, and then by extension, we're looking together with Jesus and with one another at the world. Our vision of the world is increasingly, we hope, captured by the way in which Jesus looks and beholds the world, and does so with eyes of compassion and love and grace and healing.
So the quote, "Foundation helps me discover contemplation by providing space, prioritizing how important it is, and giving me different approaches with music, poetry, readings from different members of the congregation. For me, Foundation is a safe space to set up the week. Through quiet time and music, I find inspiration and solace."
The contrast of shared silence with the busyness of the day, and those two quotes that we've ended with here are by from a couple who are both hugely busy doctors, medics, so powerful what they find in the space for their lives. Intrigued by Kate's question, which I'll ponder a little and perhaps reflect on a little later. So those are the gifts that really occurred to us that we, through the title of this series, have been able to name and celebrate and explore further. For the next bit, we wanted just to offer a few tips from our experience. This is not an exhaustive list, and it's not shared from experts to beginner, just what we're continually discovering and delighting in amongst us. So one of our encouragements, because so often people are coming from different places, different traditions, have different personalities, different needs, is using a variety of approaches, giving people quite a rich set of recipes, as it were, over time, so that people can just begin to explore and discover what really works for them. So lectio, chant, the importance of atmosphere, and mentioned already even using clowning.
Yeah, and for us, that part of that is what we've just spoken about in terms of honouring one another, and that we find a variety of approaches honours the different spiritual styles that people come to us with, and at times that does require a degree of preferring one another when it's not something you necessarily feel comfortable with or wouldn't necessarily resonate with you, but honours the gift of another.
One of the things that people in our community reflect on is the way in which perhaps they got a little stuck in one particular range of interpretations of their faith, and that all the narratives and the ways of understanding faith seem to just intensify that. And we really encourage people to look from a different space, find a new perspective, a new expression of their faith, breaking out of some of those familiar patterns and helping people to perhaps therefore be freshly attentive, to be surprised again by faith, by God.
Yeah. At risk of repeating what we've said, inviting and enabling a range of contributions from within the community is a really important aspect of what we do, which I suppose also means getting to know one another and discovering people's gifts, people's talents, the way people like to express their faith. And people might not always offer that initially. You sometimes have to dig a little bit for that, but there is treasure there. And that can feel risky at times, but when there's a sense of curiosity within the community and a willingness to embrace the unfamiliar, that does feel a bit less of a risk. We mentioned that we had a night where a couple of ladies led a contemplative service through clowning, and that's just what it sounds like. It really is. And they helped unpack 1 Corinthians 13, or 1 Corinthians 12, sorry, through clowning. And it was uncomfortable for one or two of us, but there's a sense in which we're willing to embrace the unfamiliar, to take us out of our comfort zones a little bit, to reflect in fresh ways.
We take quite a lot of care over language. We realise that language is rich, but can also be damaging, and so we choose our words as carefully as we can, ensuring that our language is as inclusive as possible. That we choose our texts, that we use carefully, particularly to open up new insights and expressions for people. Because there's a lot of variety, we're also, and I think Simon explored this earlier with our monthly pattern, but we're really careful to create and encourage patterns and rhythms. So, for example, we value hugely the pattern of the church year, and so using the Stanley Spencer images last night, for example, was our way of helping people really to explore Lent, and for many of them, Lent hasn't been a feature of their Christian lives until now. So unpacking some of the riches of the church year feels really important. And making sure that those patterns and rhythms and the language really express our core values. So even when the focus of the service is not social justice, for example, and being an engaged community, we would seek to ensure that that's given voice, and that there's plenty of space for the human. We give lots of space and celebration for people's stories. We've had services that we've called story slams in the past, where we've invited 4 or 5 members of the community to share their story around particular themes. We found that was a particularly valuable form of expression of community when we were physically apart through the lockdowns, but the space for story. Also, something of gentleness of invitation to participation, giving people plenty of permission, using names as far as possible, and really honouring each other through the use of names within our services.
And then just coming into land with these bits, the experience matters. I think that we place a high value on people's experience, that contemplation is not about ideas necessarily, it's about lived experience, both in the sense of seeing God in our past, in things we've been through, and what we've gone through, and seeing God at work there, and in the sense of the experience of the present moment. Is it gentle? Is it kind? Is it inclusive? Is it honouring of people? So experience matters for us, and related to that, we think it's so important in this to create safe spaces that are reflective and inclusive, and that's a hugely important aspect to people's engagement and ability to be fully present without fear. Is it a safe space? Is it a safe space just to be? So we try to invite. We don't expect. We honour that in people. So I think that's concluded our top tips. Are you going to go through the chat there, David, and just see?
Yeah, we can begin to. So it's great that we've already got some questions, because we have come to the Q&A portion of the session now, and Kate and Simon and Julian have given us a good start to that. So we'll start here, but do keep them coming in chat, and whether Joe or Catherine particularly want to facilitate any of this as well, that's fine. So I promised I'd respond to Kate. I wonder if inspiration prompts inactivity or outer activity. Been reflecting on that as we've been talking. I'd like to hope both. So there's something about stillness as a different energy center for us, I think. I know what it's like, the addiction of being adrenaline driven, but that can so easily, I think, be about my energy, what I can bring to something, but inspiration, that sense of drawing on God's life, the life of the Spirit, that leads both to inner stillness and to activity of a different kind of quality, perhaps. But that feels as if it's a really big and an important conversation to be continued. Simon, do you want to speak to Simon's question about?
David, if I can I just wonder if Kate wants to respond at all to her question. Did that answer your question? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Simon, carry on.
Oh, I'm having a look at Simon's question now. I'm not sure how I'd answer that question, to be honest.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me is that it's always tempting to put too much into our services. You know, we have lots of good ideas, and we're aware that still we sometimes get that wrong. And really, you know, another top tip that we need to continue to attend to ourselves is less so often can be so much more. But I think, yes, we're seeking always more simplicity. I mean, we had a service with some really beautiful content, but the tech went a bit wrong. We're largely doing our services both, you know, for online and in the room participation at the moment, and that can be a bit over tech reliant at times. And I think actually in that case there was a real danger that that too much dependence on technology got in the way of just the space and the simplicity of some really beautiful content.
With the Bible translation from Kate, we don't tend to use the inclusive Bible translation. We would typically use the NRSV, but we give space for, you know, interpretation within that, and that will come up at times. But we do try to use alternative versions of things like the Lord's Prayer. We'll share one of those a little bit later, or other readings to give voice to that.
Yeah, so I think we try and gather fairly far and wide for our liturgies, and also, you know, I think I was at theological college when Making Women Visible was published, exploring gender-specific language and imagery, largely around humanity in liturgical texts, but beginning to explore that in relation to God as well. And I think the debate continues, and the discussions and the creativity around that continues to grow. And we want to offer a wide range of names for God, images of God that aren't sort of drawn from quite a narrow monarchical male tradition.
I'm just skipping down a little bit. Julian's got a couple of really good questions up, and I think we'll come back to those. One of the questions I really wanted to ask from Catherine about, and I was wondering this: how much work is it to do this weekly thing every week, and how big is your team, and how do you get? That's 3 questions in one, isn't it? How do you invite people to lead and create and get involved and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it depends on the weeks. Some weeks are more labor intensive than others. The team, we have a steering group, and that's 4 of us that meet monthly. So David, myself, and Catherine and Alice. And typically it's better if, like any of you will know, the further ahead you plan, the better with these things, the easier it is to get other people involved. And I would say we're reasonable at that, but we don't always hit the nail on the head. But for example, a service like last night would take a lot more hours to prepare, with stations and things like that than a rest service, which would follow a fairly similar pattern each time. Would you add anything to that?
No. I think that's right. It feels always worth doing well. It feels like we could always spend longer on it, and I think you know, that the importance of being a bit stripped out sometimes, and allowing the space and the silence is also really important. There's some wonderful questions here. I was scrolling through the questions as well. Jo, do you want to continue directing us?
Yeah, I can do. There's another after Catherine's question, and it resonates with Julian's question as well, which is about how, if you're encouraging leadership from everybody in the group, how do you ensure that all of that aligns with your values and with the language and all the things that you've talked about? I think that's an important question.
Yeah.
Or is that part of the steering group?
I think it is, yeah, but also really encouraging others to go into leadership. And we're about to launch a workshop that we think will happen about once a quarter or so for people who haven't led before to come and work with us. And Simon and I also will accompany others in leading services rather than just letting people get on. So we hope there's there's learning, information and support that goes on as well. And what's my role vis-a-vis Simon's and others? For me, the priest accompanier was kind of the best way of putting it. The accompaniment bit is really important. So I'm walking with the journey of contemplative community. And we each bring gifts to that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add on to that last question. So sometimes it goes wrong. When you're inviting people to contribute. We recently had a service. It was on a fairly sensitive topic, and space was given for people to share. And one person's sharing significantly hurt other people in the group, and it's. It's working in the messiness of that at times, and working to resolve hurt and bring people together again. So it doesn't always go according to how we would imagine it or plan it.
Thank you. Again, a couple of questions with a similar bent to them. Synergy between you and the ordinary parish, if there is such a thing. Is it a missional part of the ordinary parish, or is it something else? And then, is it important to offer something that's contemplative with its own identity, or is it a service within the wider? You can see the questions for that kind of.
Yeah, so that's Julian and Simon's questions. Which feel like they do connect. So I think it's not only about this, but one of the things it's about is kind of house style. I think. So we do in our morning congregations within the benefice of Cottam and St Paul's seek to be contemplative and express that in all sorts of ways that perhaps relate to what we've been describing. But I think they still look very like church, as people might imagine it would ordinarily be. And I think sometimes that can create quite a threshold for people to cross. And I think in Foundation we're seeking to make something more accessible or less clearly looking like church, but certainly being rooted in a parochial family for us is important. And I think the gifts go both ways. So Foundation are now gifting the way in which we've planned to keep Lent to the members of our morning congregations as well. And clearly there's the ongoing gift of space and friendship and financial support from the morning congregations to enable this perhaps more obviously missional contemplative community.
I'm conscious I've been speaking for Julian. I'm just wondering if he wants to come in and add anything or draw anything out.
Not really, no. I don't want to get in the way of other people's really good questions, but there is one thing, I guess, which is about personnel resources. Simon has talked about how much time it's taken to do some things, and I'm wondering, in the busyness of parochial life, how this might be resourced.
Thanks.
I think we've got to the stage here where I've got other colleagues in the benefice, ministerial colleagues, lay and ordained, but we reached the point where, having had very rich support from a mixed mode placement student, a student placement on a mixed mode training path, that she brought so much that we knew when she moved on that we would have to recruit someone, and that's when we met and appointed Simon. So having dedicated time makes a huge difference, I think.
Thanks.
On a slightly different tack, we've got a question here from Christine. Do you want to ask it yourself, Christine, or I can't see you?
There we go. I'm happy to ask it.
Okay.
I've come from a background in inclusive churches, and I'm part of one at the moment, as well as being based here in Queens in Birmingham. I just wonder, when we use terms like all faiths and none are welcome, what that actually looks like on the ground, and particularly if it's hosted in a Christian venue, if it's facilitated and dare I say resourced by the church, what that actually looks like on the ground, and how you wrestle with that. It's not a loaded question, it's just an honest question.
I think I'd respond to that by saying, for me, it's a little bit about posture, and if that's the right word, that we are explicitly Christian. We are who we are. We that comes across in all of our services and what we do. But our posture to it is, we're not trying to persuade anyone. I think that's where contemplation comes in. We simply give space for people to respond as they wish and to reflect. So it's, whilst we're clear about who we are and what we're talking about and offering, it comes without expectation, I suppose, that people are allowed just to be and to share from their own experience. We don't, for me anyway, I don't feel that dilutes who we are. It doesn't threaten who we are or what we believe, but it's just a response to that, and that's welcome.
I'm not sure if I've got anything to add to, apart from it feels, Christine, like a really interesting question, and perhaps we're very much at the beginning of that particular, let's call it an ecumenical journey. But you know, I'd certainly echo Simon's observations that silence offers a very generous space for all of us, whatever our faith background, but to be held within a particular faith tradition gives a story, a narrative around that, that we hope that many people would find a place within that narrative that doesn't necessarily have any particular creedal outcomes.
Thank you. That's really good. I find the word posture really helpful, Simon. That's a helpful language to use.
Joe, I could whiz through a couple if you.
Yeah, go for it, Simon. Yeah.
Just looking through a couple from Andy McQueen there about foundation outside the monthly services. That's something we think about and would like to do more of. A couple of things we've done are, well, I run a Wednesday lunchtime midweek pause, so that's half an hour on Zoom, just an opportunity to come together, and it's usually a little bit of liturgy, scripture, space for silence. And again, that's been enlightening for me, that people, even on Zoom, like to gather to be silent together. There's something tangibly different, as David said, about being silent with other people. So that's regularly it's 3 or 4 of us, but it still feels significant for each of those people. We did a series, as I said, based on these. This is a great resource, Bridges for Contemplative Living, and there's I think 8 in the series, plus an Advent and a Lent one as well, and that's all about contemplative dialogue. So it's a group thing, well worth looking at. I did come from outside the community. I'd been a leader of an evangelical church close by for 5 years, and found that I was moving into a different space in all kinds of ways, theologically particularly. And when I left that role, I said, there's no chance I'm going to work for a church again for a long time, unless, and I had a list of different things that would convince me otherwise. And then I stumbled across the foundation role, which met all the criteria on my list. And so that's how I sort of stumbled upon that and felt very much led to that. So yeah, I did come from outside the community. I arrived in June from just down the road. So yeah, and people do attend foundation from other churches and non, and that's been a big question for me coming in. Sorry, David, I'm hogging this.
That's fine. You're on a roll.
But just it raises some really good questions in terms of ecclesiology. What does it look like? What does pastoral ministry look like for when you've got people for whom it's not their primary Christian community? What does mission look like as a group? What does even building community mean in that context? And they are questions I don't have answers to, but I'm enjoying musing on. So yeah, a variety of people.
Some interesting questions from well, one from Nigel and two from Nigel. So the first about the ordering of the building, that's very much a work in progress, and in fact our architect is here with us today, and we're kind of at the final planning and approval stages for a more significant reordering of the building. Really wanting to extend the flexibility of the space. It's the way it can be used for different worship and other gatherings, and Foundation has really contributed to those plans by the ways in which we're already using the space. Any plans for a residential community? Just before the pandemic, we had 4 people who were lined up to live in a property next door to Cotton that's owned by the church. We were calling it Cornerstone Community, and because of the pandemic that didn't happen at that point. And then as we continue to explore and pray with that idea, I think what emerged for us was that we were starting in the wrong place, that actually starting to explore common patterns and practices for a dispersed community, and to deepen the values through those shared patterns and practices was the first step towards potentially a residential expression of that community down the line. Thanks, Kate, for the links about the Bridges to Contemplative Living series. Oh, thank you. Anderson wants to pray for us. What would we? So we asked exactly that question. We've got another way in which Foundation exists, as so many things exist, is in WhatsApp world, and we put a question on WhatsApp asking people to identify what their prayer for Foundation was, drawing inspiration from St. Ignatius, who said, if you can only pray for one thing, what is the one thing that you would pray for? We framed it in that way. And for me, for us, I think, in conversation, it's been so rich, really identifying the contemplative gifts and looking at ways that they're just beginning to really deepen and also be missional, in as much as they're reaching other people and other people are being drawn to connect with us. So I guess that would be my prayer, that process of deepening would really continue, and that might, be gift not only to the people who come now, but also to those who are looking for something like a bit like this. Anything you'd add, Simon?
I think it's just, for me, the ability to embody the values that we so strongly believe in as a community, and to enable others to do this, to do that together as a community in when we're not necessarily a local parish, you know, as a community. How do we do that together? And for us as leaders, how do we enable that, facilitate that?
Great quotes there in the chat to friends of Foundation in the extended sense of friend as a source of inspiration from David Walker and Rowan Williams.
Thanks, Catherine. I believe the next part of the session, David and Simon wanted to share with us what it was like to experience the Foundation experience. So I think we're going to take 10 minutes to do that, and then probably just draw together for a couple of minutes at the end to say goodbye and thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's quite dark outside here already, raining. So perhaps we can imagine this is 7:30 on a Sunday evening. Come to us this night, O God.
Come to us with light.
Speak to us this night, O God.
Speak to us your truth.
Dwell with us this night, O God.
Dwell with us in love. Step aside. Let the day breathe. Look within. Let your heart be still. Listen well. Hear the still, small voice calling you back to what God has made you to be. In the middle of all that life offers us, in the eye of all the storms,
we thank you for the gift of this moment, for the grace of this presence. At Foundation, we dwell richly in the Psalms, finding them the space of posture and interpretation and experience in life echoed. As Simon and I read, you might want to attend to those words that particularly echo something in your mind and heart today. Incline your ear, O Lord, and answer me, for I am poor and in misery.
Preserve my soul, for I am faithful. Save your servant, for I put my trust in you.
Be merciful to me, O Lord, for you are my God. I call upon you all the day long.
Gladden the soul of your servant, for to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul.
For you, Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in steadfast love to all who call upon you.
Give ear, O Lord, to my prayer, and listen to the voice of my supplication.
In the day of my distress, I will call upon you, for you will answer me.
Teach me your way, O Lord, and I will walk in your truth. Knit my heart to you, that I may fear your name.
I will thank you, O Lord my God, with all my heart, and glorify your name forevermore.
You, Lord, are gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and full of kindness and truth. And we're just going to hold the silence for a moment and invite you to, if you'd like to share a word or a phrase or a verse in the chat that maybe has resonated with you, or just to sit and hold that in the silence.
Poems so wonderfully extend the genre of the Psalter. Of our regulars at Foundation, Mary Oliver. I have refused to live locked in the orderly house of reasons and proofs. The world I live in and believe in is wider than that. And anyway, what's wrong with maybe? You wouldn't believe what once or twice I have seen. I'll just tell you this. Only if there are angels in your head will you ever possibly see one.
Jesus Christ, our Lord and our friend, we give you thanks that yours is the hand at our shoulder, Yours is the voice that calls us. Yours are the eyes that look on us with love. Yours is the face that turns our face to the world with love. Be with us as our companion on the way, and unite us in the bonds of true friendship and peace.
Version of the Lord's Prayer that we use regularly from the Anglican Church of New Zealand. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, Source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope, come on earth.
With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen.
May your Spirit guide and strengthen us in service to your world. May we be strangers no longer, but friends and pilgrims on the way to your kingdom.
The peace of the Lord be always with you.
And also with you.
So it just falls to me to say thank you to David and Simon for their time and their input today. I don't know what to say, really. There's been so much that I think I need to go away and have a lie down and think about it all. So thank you, guys. It's been so rich. Thank you for all your questions. I hope it's blessed you guys as much as it's blessed me. Quick sales pitch. If you're not already a Heart Edge member, it's free to join. Catherine posted the links earlier, so please do sign up and get access to all sorts of nice resources and invitations to events such as these in the future. So thank you, Simon. Thank you, David. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks for all the encouragement.
Yeah,
thank you.
Bye.
Great to see you all.
Bye.